Hello, this is Dr. Lauderbach, and this is a lecture on the fundamentals of quality improvement, both from the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle that we learn about in IHI Open School, and another approach to improve processes that's known generally as lean. So I wanted to just go through some of this with you, and then at the end of this short video, we'll talk about generalizability. What's the difference between research and quality improvement? What's the appropriate role in scholarship for quality improvement? And then I offer you a few other resources too. You have this slide deck as well in your module, so I'm just going to follow the slide deck here. These are the objectives for this week. So at the end of your learning of this week, you should be able to describe how quality improvement contributes to DNP practice and identify resources available to support quality improvement in DNP practice. Analyze clinical and academic work to differentiate between research and quality improvement projects. You'll also be able to utilize quality improvement methods and tools to improve patient or population outcomes. MFI is the Institute of Healthcare Improvement's name for their quality improvement methodology, and it is a very traditional QI, the PDSA or PDCA cycle or focused PDCA. You'll see it called different things, but it's basically a real-time running experimentation process to improve processes and then lead them, those changes that you make for improvement, to be sustained. Six Sigma, or DMAIC, is shown here as define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Really comes from one of the quality improvement gurus whose name was Duran. And Duran's point was you can use statistics to understand variation. And by understanding variation, you can tell when something is in control or not in control. And your approach to improving outcomes will be different for a process that's in control but not delivering the outcomes you want versus a process that is out of control and really its outputs are unpredictable altogether. And then also we're going to touch on lean. Comes out of the Toyota production system, and it is a more tactical approach, less theoretical. But there are so many ways that these methods overlap with each other that I'll try to sort through some of it for you. So for today, you've already done the preparatory work of the IHI Open School and the chapter in Terry. I want to talk a bit more about Lean and Six Sigma than you got in the IHI modules, because they are really, in their MHI method for improvement, it is really a focused PDSA model, very traditional Deming style quality improvement model. We're going to discuss the similarities and differences. As we said, examine the relationship of QI to DNP scholarship, and then consider in the Terry chapter 14, you found a case study of heart failure readmission project improvement. Had a pretty eclectic approach. It didn't really follow a recognized QI model, but it does use the Plan, Do, Study Act or Plan, Do, Check Act. It incorporates other methods such as SWOT, which is really a strategy model. It's a planning model. And it demonstrates that you can blend a lot of these tools together, and also with evidence-based practice, and they can really come together with their various theoretical bases working in synchrony with each other to produce good outcomes. So I guess the point is to know that you don't have to follow in a rigid way one particular theoretical approach to improving outcomes. Now, in the IHI Open School, they had a couple of points that I'll just highlight here. You can improve on their presentation of traditional quality improvement. While you are in the IHI Open School, take a look at their other modules. You might find other things that we didn't assign to you that are available in there that could help you with your DNP project. So hold on to that sign-in. You may want to come back to that as you're working through your DNP project. It's really a very helpful site to know about. But it might help also to have a little more idea about lean, because some of the work that DNP students want to do in their projects lends itself very well to lean, especially anybody who's working on administrative things where you're looking at flow in hospitals. And you know what I'm talking about. It's when the ER is backed up all the way to the curb and we can't get anybody out to a extended care or post-acute care setting, and everything gets stuck. And we end up with nurses who should be taking care of 3 or 4 patients in the emergency department now have 12, and you understand exactly what I'm talking about here, I know. So lean is excellent for that kind of work, that flow kind of work. Not that you can't approach it from a focused PDCA or PDSA approach, you can. And most hospitals actually do. The IHI methods and their model, their MHI model, is what most hospitals use. But I do know of hospitals that have almost exclusively used lean techniques with really good success as well. And as it says here, they're often used in combination. But what's better? Lean or QI? Well, that's like asking somebody what's better, vancomycin or ceftriaxone? Well, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. As described by Womack and Jones in Lean Thinking, which you have not been assigned to read, but a book, an important book, the route to perfected production system has 5 waypoints. So this, when you see perfected production system, that's lean. That is about lean. Okay, specify the value desired by the customer. You'll find that in Focus PDCA as well, in the MHI. Identify the value stream for each product providing that value and challenge all of the wasted steps. Lean focuses a lot on waste. QI does as well, but Lean really looks for wasted energy, wasted movements, wasted steps. And currently, that are currently necessary to provide the service or product in the value stream. Value stream is just the process, another word for the process. 3, make the product flow continuously through the remaining value-added steps. That's the goal, for continuous flow. But sometimes, if you can't get continuous flow, the next best thing is to pull rather than push. You know what push is. Let's go back to our ER. Excuse me. Our ER example. The problem with it is it's a push problem. It's a push, trying to push patients up out of that ER into the ICUs and the medical surgical units. Doesn't work. Things get jammed up. People get irate. Dissatisfaction becomes rampant throughout the process. Pull systems, on the other hand, is when the ICU is calling the ER and asking them to send up the patient. Send me the patient. That is a rare event, especially in these days. But a pull system works so much more smoothly than a push system. So in Lean and in the Toyota production system model, when you can't have the flow be continuous, you don't have the controls you need to create continuous flow, then your goal is to have it be a pull system. So it's trying to pull things through the process rather than push them. And 5 is manage toward perfection so that the number of steps and the amount of time and information needed to serve the customer continuously fall. What we would say in QI lingo is reduce the cycle time. make things go quicker. Complete, but quicker. Don't cut steps. Just get all the waste out of that process so that the cycle time, that is like the time it takes to produce a discharge or a surgery or something like that in a healthcare setting, is reduced. We talked about the Toyota production system and waste. Here's a slide that just shows you the wastes, the 7 wastes that the Toyota production system has identified: time, defects, motion, transportation, overproduction, inventory, and unnecessary processing. So, now making some comparisons in a more concrete way between these 2 ways to improve outcomes. Here's a chart, and you will find all of these, by the way, in the module in something called the Lean and QI white paper that was produced by the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, the same people who do Open School. So breeze through that or refer to that. But in particular, look at Table 3 if you want to understand the difference between Lean and QI. That white paper, I think, is as clear as I've ever seen it written. So this chart comes right out of the white paper. Model for the components of the model for improvement and components of the A3 problem solving. A little confusion there. This is the Toyota production system. Another company they refer to as A3. But this is Lean and this is QI. Aim, define what you're trying to accomplish, eliminate or at least reduce the gap between the current state and standard performance, or the current state and the ideal state. The measures, the changes, PDSA, plan, do, study, act, test cycles to increase the degree or belief in the changes. This is the core of QI. Over here in the Lean, it's test the changes to confirm that they reduce or eliminate the gap between the current state and the ideal state, and revise or augment the changes as needed to achieve the goals. Continuing, we have purpose. Purpose in Lean is to maximize, oh here I've switched them, sorry. We were QI on the left and Lean on the right, and now we're Lean on the left and QI on the right. But you can see these in that white paper. You're maximizing customer specified value of products and services, and the value includes the cost, timeliness, absence of defects, and so forth. And in the QI model, you're formulating and codifying generalizable knowledge that yields predictable improvement in outcomes when applied to diverse systems. And when applied in healthcare, the aims ideally balance patient experience, cost, and population health. Here we see the origins. It came from engineers working in the Toyota production facilities in Japan. Over here was developed primarily by consultants working first in the automotive and electronics and manufacturing, and then it was elaborated into healthcare. The focus and scope. In Lean, methods are specialized for repetitive product production. In QI, the approach is more abstract and includes methods for problem and aim definition applicable to any system. Many initiatives are concerned with the spread of evidence-based practices across healthcare systems and coalitions of enterprises. And the key principles guiding improvement for Lean is value definition, which was described above, and ideals and change concepts inherent in the Toyota production system form an integrated template that prompts ideas for problem mitigation and guides Kaizen, which is the Japanese word for continuous improvement. In QI, profound knowledge, and that comes right out of Deming, his idea of systems of profound knowledge, to really understand a process. That's what profound knowledge means. And the model for improvement apply to any system, not a specific system. Program theory provides the aim and the change concepts to guide testing. Metrics provide criteria, and the iterative, meaning repeating PDSA cycles, are used in diverse conditions to develop, test, implement, and then spread and sustain robust changes. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. Let's just move on to Six Sigma here. So what you hear about Six Sigma, it simply means the sixth standard deviation. When a process is in control of Six Sigma, at Six Sigma level, it is 99.99966% consistent. It delivers exactly the same thing to the sixth standard deviation. That's why they call it Six Sigma, if you've heard that. We have one kind of care process, and only one, that approaches Six Sigma, and I wonder if you might know what that is. It is the care process that we use throughout the developed world, U.S., Europe, developed world, where nearly the entire practice is evidence-based. And it is done with protocols and checklists. It has all the components, and it delivers care with very little errors and variation. And that practice is the practice of general anesthesia. That's the only thing we do currently in healthcare that approaches Six Sigma reliability. This just shows you some more information about it, and you can go back and look at these if you want to. DMAIC, again, is a lot about using statistics in the way that Duran in particular and Schuart used statistics to understand variation and then build appropriate controls to reduce variation, because variation, to their way of thinking, is evil. Problems we get into, especially in nursing practice, is we want to look at variation in the demands of people. We want to individualize care. And so we have a tug of war sometimes with variation. We want our processes, though, to not have variation. We want the application to be individualized, and that says that we will take standard processes and adapt them in the way we implement them toward patient care, so that we have individualized care, lots of variation, from processes that we can count on to always deliver the same value every time they run. So there you go. So how does Six Sigma compare to the model for improvement from IHI, which is CQI, or quality improvement? And there is just a chart that shows it to you. With Six Sigma, we define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. MFI has the 3 questions that you learned about in the open school, followed by PDSA. So defining exactly what is it we're trying to improve, and then going through an experimentation cycle, plan, do, study, act. And that, by the way, is iterative. You don't go around once, generally, and stop. You are doing that continuously, hence continuous improvement. With Six Sigma, the aim is precision and reliability. And with quality improvement, the aim is continuous improvement. Six Sigma, the goal is to reduce the cost of poor quality. With continuous quality improvement, the goal is to achieve the desired outcome. Six Sigma uses complex statistical analysis, including lots of regression, to identify key factors that are driving the outcomes. And in quality improvement, it uses measures of frequency and variation around the mean. How do we get that down? It's almost as though in MFI, in quality improvement, it's just a watered down version of Six Sigma, and in fact, that is just what it is. Repeated adjustments to a fixed process to reduce variation in outputs is what you'll find in Six Sigma. In MFI, a highly iterative, that is back and forth, allowing for changes to a process in real time to achieve an aim. And Six Sigma is resource intensive, whereas MFI can be embedded into existing work. Oh, we already talked about anesthesia. I got ahead of myself in my slides. So this video, I'm not going to play it here in this video I'm making, but you go into the slide deck. This is worth it. It's about 11 minutes long. Barry Shore is a well-known educator of quality improvement, and he gives a wonderful discussion. So if you have a minute, go in to the slide deck and play this slide. You can do that by just clicking on here, but I'm not going to take time to do that right now. So let's talk about the difference between research and quality improvement. Built this little chart for you. Which is more generalizable? Well, that is a big question that took me a while to kind of grasp. Research is generalizable. Quality improvement is specific to the setting that you're working in. So, research, proof of effectiveness, gather enough data to authoritatively study for effect and control for all the known confounders. That's what data collection is about. Your method, one large test with a fixed hypothesis controlled for bias as much as possible, and the results are taken pre and post some intervention. In quality improvement, you're looking for sustained improvements. Sustainability is a big deal. Data collection. You gather just enough data to inform your improvement, and you only collect data on one or two confounders at a time. Balancing measures and so forth as needed. Methodology. Unlike research, in quality improvement, rapid sequential tests with a hypothesis that changes as learning takes place. There is no effort to control bias. It isn't even relevant. We don't even think about bias. We just work in the real world of that process, and we're trying to improve it and learn about it and make other things and just keep going around that PDSA cycle. The results are regular assessment with run charts. Did we get variation down? Do we see means moving in the direction that we want in whatever our metrics are? Those are the things that we look at over time. Run charts, not pre-post assessments. So, where I did my DNP work at Wayne State University, there was some discussion that has been ongoing, and it is happening across academia and in nursing educators and so forth, and nursing academicians, I guess I should say. Is quality improvement really doctoral level work? And my answer is, the answer is yes. And here's a paper that people refer to very often, but it's exactly why we have DNP in nursing. And this is how they titled their article. The answer is 17 years. What is the question? And it's about understanding time lags in translational research. So we need both. We need research and we need quality improvement and evidence-based practice. None of them are sufficient to improve patient outcomes by themselves. What these authors published, and now it's been, I don't know when this was published, probably 10 years ago maybe. They did a very interesting little study, and what they found is that it takes 17 years, and they weren't just talking about nursing, they're talking about medicine mostly. It takes 17 years for things that we know, that research has produced generalizable, controlled, randomly controlled trial data. We know what to do, and it takes about 17 years for that to get commonly used in practice. That's a gap of 17 years in translating research into practice. What DNPs, I say, as a DNP myself, what DNPs do is we're trying to use all of these change methodologies, these improvement methods, the evidence-based practice things that we've learned about, not just in building guidelines, but putting them into use and understanding how they're really used and not used and barriers and all that stuff. That's what we do. That's what DNPs do. And that's the difference. Now, that's just my opinion. And you're not going to have to take a test or anything with that answer, but that's my opinion. So we got this 17-year gap. Oh, their article was 2011. So I was about right, 10 years. They did a review of 23 articles and described the process. It is surprising that 17 is the answer to several related but differing questions. Basic research, human research, clinical research, guidelines, and practice. 17 years. So that's our challenge. close the gap. We always have a need to build more knowledge. That's what we look to researchers for, build more knowledge. What we need to do is get it into practice so that it makes a difference in the outcomes of patients. I refer you here to Melnick and Feinert-Overholt. Very good model for evidence-based practice implementation. As you know, there are kind of two schools of EBP models. I think you probably had this somewhere along the line. There are those models that you use to actually go into the published literature and select it and build what you find there in the science into a translatable practice model or guideline. There are those models. Tytler's model's that way, the Iowa model, STAR model, there's a bunch of them. And then there are a couple process models. And Melnick-Feinert-Overholt's model is a process model. Now, if you read their textbook, they talk about all of it, but their model is about how do you actually, once you establish you have a guideline, you know what the guideline is, you would use a EBP model like Melnick-Feinert-Overholt's model to implement that model and to monitor it and to use all the stuff that we're talking about. Most of it is QI. The techniques and theories of QI and lean to some extent, but QI more likely to get that evidence-based practice at the bedside. Now back to is process improvement really doctoral level? I would refer you to Boyer's model of scholarship. You can see a number of things. Boyer says that there are these 4 blocks of scholarship. And where we fall isn't so much in discovery, but more in application. So there is a scholarship for application. You could argue that a lot of our work is integration as well. But application, that's probably where you fall. If you're a PhD, you're in discovery. So what about QI and evidence-based practice? Well, external evidence from research, evidence-based theories, opinion leaders and expert panels, clinical expertise, and patient preferences and values all come together to generate evidence-based clinical decision-making. The importance of QIs to DNP is now you've got this knowledge and you've translated it to make it usable. You've got to do something to change the processes that are going on in the care of patients to bring that knowledge to bear on the outcomes of your patients. And for that, you can use QI. That's what we use QI for in healthcare. Essentials of doctoral education for advanced nursing practice to organizational and systems leadership for quality improvement. So the essentials, as you probably heard, are changing. But this was one of our essentials. We're going to a different model of essentials. But it's been pulled out to say, here are the things that advanced nursing practice and DNPs in particular must do. It's one mechanism for the application of evidence-based practice through quality improvement. But they're all systems thinking. You have to, just knowing something is not sufficient to change a patient's outcome. You have got to change the practice, and the practice is a process. QI changes processes. So that's my explanation. Generate new knowledge about improving care and patient outcomes using the best available evidence. So that's a little twist. Generate new knowledge about improving care and patient outcomes. That is definitely something you might want to consider when you're looking around at your DNP projects. My DNP project was called Addressing Barriers in the Use of Evidence-Based Practice for the Treatment of Obesity and Overweight in Primary Care. We've known for well over the 17 years, but refined every year, just reiterating what we already knew, how to help people achieve better health in terms of their body shape, their BMI, for lack of a better word, or their percent body fat, or whatever you want to call it. The adiposity of humans has a huge impact on their health if it gets too high, or in some people too low. But in our culture, because of the abundance of calories available to be consumed, we tend to be on the high end more than on the low end. We don't have, we have pockets of it, to be sure, and I don't mean to minimize this, of starvation, but it isn't really common. But overnutrition is really common. So my point is understanding more about what are the barriers to using these guidelines, and they all look so much alike because they all come out of the same science. We know what they are, and we just don't use them. Why not? That is generating knowledge. The why not? What are the barriers? How do we overcome them? And so I tried that. A process in a primary care practice, a multi-site primary care practice with pretty good outcomes, actually. Turns out I'm a patient there now. I wasn't at the time I did the DNP project, and I've been told anecdotally that people are still using materials and finding it helpful. Just to cut to the chase, a lot of what I did in there was people needed to really get comfortable with using motivational interviewing. At the core, they didn't know how to have the conversation. They knew what needed to be done, but they just didn't feel comfortable having the conversation. That also is all over the literature. If you go look for it, people are worried about stigma and bias and offending people, and so they just don't do anything at all. Oddly, we don't feel that way about hypertension. We're pretty good with hypertension, but not with adiposity. So there you go. Now you get the idea, I hope. I'm not confusing you entirely here. So more on the role of the DNP in quality improvement. Doctoral advanced practice nurses. Roles focus on providing evidence-based practice in primary and specialty care settings, promote system transformation. That's all QI. Lead in the achievement of the quadruple aim from the National Academy of Medicine: improve health, improve care, population health, the care experience, reduce costs, and enhance the joy in the work. Working in a broken process doesn't give anybody joy. So there's a lot of improvements, benefits to improvement for caregivers as well. More on the role, program evaluation. That's something you can do for your DNP project. Look at a program evaluation. The central component of NQS and AHRQ's QI process is program evaluation. That's the National Quality something S. Sorry, just can't come up with that. Or the Agency for Healthcare Improvement and Quality. Their QI process is a lot about program evaluation. That's what they really focus on. If you want to do a program eval, go look at the AHRQ stuff. That will really help clarify how you might want to go about your project. Process evaluation, effectiveness and outcomes evaluation, and cost-benefit analysis. In preparation as faculty, one of AACN's most important recommendations is the need to generate opportunities for faculty development in the areas of quality improvement methods and measurements. So, QI and DNP projects. You may very well use a QI process in your DNP project. You'll be submitting for publication. That's optional at this point, but I strongly urge you to do that. There are publication guidelines, and even if you aren't going to publish, when you're writing, if you have a QI focus in your DNP project, I really encourage you to, before you get deep into even the design of your project, go look at the Squire, SQIRE, Squire 2.0. It's the publication guidelines that a lot of publishers use for QI projects. But start with the end in mind. And here I want to show this to you. You really can't see it here very well, but you will be able to see it in the slide deck. It takes you through exactly how you would write it up. Title, abstract, problem description, knowledge available, your rationale, context, interventions, study of the interventions, measures, analysis, I'm reading it to you because I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it on this video. Ethical considerations, results, a discussion, and a summary. If you think like that when you're building your plan to do your project, that you're ultimately going to answer these questions, it will be really helpful to the design of your project. So I say, it goes on, by the way, limitations, conclusions, funding, and interpretation. Squire 2.0. If you're going to work in QI in your DNP project, or you ever plan to publish a QI project, be sure to look at Squire 2.0. Now, I mean, eventually it's going to be Squire 2.1 or 3.0 or something like that. But the Squire model really helped me figure out how to kind of frame my project once I found this. And it was a faculty member at Wayne that showed it to me. So that's pretty much it. This is just more on Squire. You can see that in the slide deck. And here's a bunch of references that maybe you'll find helpful. Well, thanks a lot. I hope we have a good week. As always, be sure to just reach out to me either on the discussion boards or directly if you have any questions.